Right, so this week I am joined by Bodhi and Tom, father and son, who have got a Kickstarter on the way. Guys, it's great to talk to you because me and my son got into this together, and so I really, really appreciate the father-son doing it together. That's, you know, something that really appeals to me, so that's great. Tell me about your project.
First of all, thank you. The father-son thing, we feel both lucky and terrible about all at the same time. As I'm sure you understand with that relationship.
It is a blessing and a curse.
It is both. It's great. You know, we're super lucky that we get to, you know, work together. And, you know, how many 25-year-olds are spending, you know, every day with their dad doing creative stuff. It's sad for me, but also, like, it's awesome for you. So I'm glad it's feeling good for you. I'm doing my time, you know, I'm making sure. No, but at the end of the day, you know, yeah, we just feel super fortunate, and you know, I appreciate that relationship a lot, and that you notice that. The project itself is called Sky Zephyrs, a comprehensive guide to airship combat by Galmer and Satva. It's essentially an overlay for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that will allow you to expand your game by giving you new rules and mechanics for airship combat, basically, along with a bunch of other things in terms of, you know, you'll get new aircrew rules, you get 3-dimensional movement mechanics, you also get, you know, brand new player feats that we've embedded our aircrew commands into and expanded massively on that. Gives you like a role on the ship. I think one of the coolest things about what we're doing is allowing people to fully customize and modify airships and build them for their game. So we have built a system where you can choose parts. We have over 200 parts for you to choose from that you can essentially build and customize your very own airship for your party, or for, you know, a group of pirates, sky pirates, or whatever you want to, you know, include in your game. And with that, we're bringing an application, website application that you'll be able to do that through as well. So just a couple of clicks will get you through to having your very own stat block and things like that. So that's kind of the general basis of what we've created. But the beautiful thing is as well, all of this can be converted for things like land combat, water combat, space combat, you know, all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, super excited about it.
Because that is lacking somewhat from 5e. Now, I have 2 airship guides, but they're both homebrewy things I found on the internet. Unearthed Arcana is one of them, for example. So yours isn't, I didn't know if yours was a world setting in and of itself in the clouds, more the vehicles itself, correct?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've taken some of the flavor from our homebrew world that we have an actual play series about, and we've taken some of the characters and some of the flavor from that and embedded some of that into it, just to make it, you know, nice and a little bit more interesting than just mechanics, you know, for you guys. So, you know, you'll find creatures from our world, spells are related to, you know, our world, some of the items are things that you'll find in our world, things like that. However, it is primarily about giving people mechanics for vehicles and things like that to be able to just expand, have that dynamic swashbuckling, you know, almost like a dogfight, you know, kind of chess match that you see in movies and things like that in a D&D campaign as a party, basically.
And it's also I mean, particular for, if you think of it as an overlay, and that word sometimes can be confusing because some people think like, well, does that mean it's for VTTs? Well, it can be, and it will be. Does it mean you can use it for, like, in real life games? Yes, you can as well. So it kind of lays over things like Spelljammer or Eberron, those games, and it kind of modifies those mechanics of their games in a way that you can. The thing that's really cool about this that I think is important to convey is, if you're really a crunch master, if you love crunch and you like, you know, getting into the numbers and to, you know, allocating different actions for different crew members, you can do that. Or if you love role play and want to have, you know, as little of that as possible, you can turn the dials that way as well. So it's pretty customizable so that it will adapt to your own DM or player style at the table, which is something that we really thought was important.
Yeah, for sure.
So where did this gap get noticed? Did you look at the new Spelljammer and go, this is awful?
Well.
Sounds like you've heard that before.
Yeah. It's almost like it's almost like it echoes throughout our community. No, yeah, I would say so. Actually, we started our homebrew world about 2 years ago, and
Before Spelljammer.
Yeah, well, obviously not the OG Spelljammer, but the 5th edition Spelljammer. Yeah, way before that. And I essentially came up with this world idea that is floating islands, basically, and people are living on these floating islands and kind of commuting back and forth and dealing with drama that goes on up in the sky. And so we went with that, and I realized really early on, I was like, wow, I wanted to do like steampunky airships, and there's just nothing for it. There's like naval rules for Ghosts of Saltmarsh, there's a little bit in Eberron. Spelljammer at the time, I was looking at earlier edition stuff, had some things, but what it came down to was there was just not really anything leading the way in terms of being like, cool, when you get into combat with a ship, this is how this should go down. And so that was kind of the first gap I found, and so we started kind of thinking about it then, and about last year we decided, right, it's time for us to fully, I'd come up with a version of mechanics just for like when we were playing it in homebrew and stuff, but then we were like, cool, it's time to push forward and turn this into something, because there's something here. We talked to enough people who were like, I would love to have something like that for, my game and things like that. So we just drove forward with it from there. But yeah, huge. And also, like, when Spelljammer did come out, we were happy at the same time, because we were like, wow, like this is just such a mess, and just given so little, it feels like so little thought was put into it, that, we were like, we know we've put our heart and souls into this. We believe we've come up with a really awesome system. And, we kind of see this as like our love song to the D&D community, So with the lack of effort there and the effort that we've put in, we hope that we can then bring something to the community that echoes through, a lot of time, and people use, for their games for a lot of time, essentially.
Yeah, that sounds great. So who pulled who into the whole idea?
That's a good question.
I think it was a little bit of a collaboration. We at some point realized that in this setting there was travel, and we know that some of the NPCs in the setting weren't all the most honorable people. So at some point, and we had a whole crew of pirates as well. At some point, I think it might have started with our pirate crew, and then at that point, we're like, okay, so how is this going to go down? Like, what do we need to do to make this, kind of a fun encounter, a simple encounter, but a dynamic encounter that doesn't feel like it's like taking away from traditional 5th edition player combat, but kind of complements it and can get you another layer of interaction, another layer of fun, creativity, strategy, almost like 3D chess, basically. And so that's kind of what we went for. But it felt like it was almost like an aha moment for the table for us, didn't it?
Yeah, I think we actually ran our first airship combat, and the ships were stationary, because that was my solution, was like, they've already begun you get ambushed in the night and you're grappled already. I was like, we're not moving anywhere, we're making it super easy. And from there, I think what happened was I had kind of concepted it, come up with some basic stuff, and you were the one, and our partner Tony, you guys kind of were like, there's something here, like that we should push forward with this. So I think they kind of dragged me into getting to putting my basic mechanics and ideas that I had into a bigger, better idea, and workshopping it and all that kind of stuff. So you can thank them for
the pain you felt over the last year.
pulling me up by my bootstraps and getting me involved.
So Tom, did you play years ago?
No, I'm pretty new. We all started playing. Well, actually, Bodhi's played longer than me. So he played back in school when he was in.
Yeah, I was like 13, 14.
13 or 14. So he had a teacher that was, one of those impactful teachers in your life. That was was he theater teacher?
Yeah, he was drama and film studies.
Yeah. And so he introduced Bodhi to D&D, and then you stopped playing for many, many years.
Yeah, 3rd edition was just too crunchy for me. As a dyslexic, it was just way too crunchy at the time, and 5th edition hadn't come out. So then, years later, 5th edition comes out, and I start watching a series on YouTube by a group called Node, and it was just an actual play that they did. They're actually Corridor Digital, but it was like their side kind of thing. And from there, you found Acquisitions Incorporated, and that was it.
And we were off to the races.
And that was it. We fell in love with the live shows and all that, and since then we've both been playing probably, I would say, at least maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks at this point.
Yeah, it's been pretty regular.
Yeah.
Still playing while on the grind, trying to get it together.
It's important, man, isn't it? I mean, it's
Yeah.
important. Like, and it's getting harder and harder. Like, the closer we get to the Kickstarter, the more, the more urgency, the more seriousness, the more work, the more grind. All of that is pushing further to the forefront. So we always have to remind ourselves, like, okay, let's take a step back and have some fun. And so we've introduced a couple little family games. We had another like 4-part short arc that's outside of D&D that we just did for fun as well. That was really
that's on the internet. So, but we have our long running actual play. So we're playing like at least once a month with that, and then we have been streaming other things in between that. But because we're in the Kickstarter stuff, we stopped streaming a little bit more now and have been focusing. But yeah, we still play for fun, just because for me as the writer, I need a break. I need to goof around every now and then. Like, I just need a bit of fun, because just being in the grind and being serious about stuff all the time is great. But and especially because when we do play in our actual play, we take it very seriously. We consider it like a show, a performance, and we're acting, and where this is something that we're putting a lot of effort into. To then be able to just play and goof around is really fun, and do that for sure.
So what are you most excited about inside the project? I can't wait for people to see. What would that be?
Oh, you go first. I'll go second.
I think for me it's the shipbuilder. So if you can imagine, Chris, you go to a website and you've gone there because either you're the DM or you're part of an upcoming campaign, and there needs to be some whatever ships that are going to be introduced in the campaign. So if it's going to be airships or spaceships or naval vessels or whatever, but you go in there and you can just use your imagination. You can swap things out, you can chop and change things, you can watch the stat block modify as you're doing that. You can mini max your ship any way you want, and then at the end you push the button, there's your ship stat block. You get a sort of a virtual D&D receipt that shows how much each part was and how much it cost your character or your party, that type of thing. So I think there's a really cool amount of just creative autonomy and just being able to do that and bring your own custom ships in. And then we have kind of casting forward. There is a hope that evolves even further and people can start building their own parts and bringing them into a marketplace, and having another place where creatives can come and bring some of their artistic ability in.
Yeah, like a drive-thru RPG, but for like building vehicles and introducing vehicle packs and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's my jam, I think. What about you?
You love that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Do you guys expect it to get pushed immediately to the Mad Max level? Because I know my table would be like, what is the most ferocious, crazy looking thing? You know what I mean?
I
It
hope
won't
so,
be like,
man.
let's get some ship trims. It would be like, let's get a nuclear missile.
Well, you know what? So I would say, that's an awesome question. That's a really great question, and I love that image of Mad Max style. The idea is this: with the 200 parts that we're releasing off the bat, you'll be able to create a variety of different airships, and they're kind of, though, like in terms of the crazy ideas that we have for parts, we've kind of taken the top end of crazy and saved that for when we come back and create new stuff. But what we've given you is the like workaday beautiful parts that you're going to be able to mix and match, some really fun creative things that are super different and allow different classes to really be successful and things like that. But essentially, we want to make it a space that is super free, super creative. So if your DM is cool with you going Mad Max level, then we have made it so that based on whatever size ship you choose, there's certain amounts of things that you can have on certain size ships. As long as you fill out all the ones on that ship, you could have 30 chained harpoons, you could have one cataclysm world ender on your ship. There's all these different parts that you can totally deck it out to be absolutely crazy and as wild as you want it to be. Or on the other end, if you're a first level party that's buying their first ship and your DM restricts you to 500 gold or 1,000 gold or whatever it is, you can build a very rudimentary ship that allows you to create modifications, upgrade as you get more money and progress through your adventures and things like that as well.
Take it into port.
Totally, exactly, and go get it, take it into the shop and get some new bits and bobs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely want it to be Mad Max, but also simple as anything.
Yeah. So I mean, going back to Spelljammer with the sort of magical running of the ship, have you had to cover those sort of bases, or is it just this is metal, this is wood?
So essentially, what we've done is what we've given you is our default flight system. So the thing that powers the Sky Zephyrs that we've written are essentially our power gems. They're crystals that can be filled with spell slots, and some crystals actually can be filled with other things like blood and lightning damage and things like that to give them boosts and more energy and things like that. But essentially, the crystal system is something that if you wish to plug into your Zephyrs, you're welcome to do so. We've got everything down to like how to charge them, how to jury rig them, you know, all this stuff of how to, you know, work with these crystals. But if you want to, you know, plug in, you know, what Spelljammer have used, or, you know, your own, you know, I know some people have like, my wood is lighter so it flies, and other people are like, you know, I have crystals that protrude from the ship that create anti-gravity fields and things. So whatever you want to make your system of essentially power source, you can then go in and, you know, as any DM does, or any, you know, any sort of party that's playing in a homebrew setting, tweak like things like within the parts and stuff to make it then suit exactly that. And realistically, that doesn't take much work at all. The gem system is pretty solid as well. If you want to take the lazy route, it's a super easy system. It's what I use in my world. It also makes a nice resource in your world that, you know, becomes something that is very tradable. It's also, you know, something that people are hunting down because it grows on creatures at times or within mines. You know, it's really you know, a versatile kind of item and resource for a DM as well as a game and players as well.
Yeah.
Tom, what were you going to say?
No, I think you covered it. I think you covered it on on that bit. Yeah.
So, what was the difficulties? What were the downs where you were like, you know what, it's too much work? You know, what was something?
Dude, that first of all, thank you for asking that question. I've got to say, like, everyone's always talking about like what's the, like, you know, we don't often talk about the struggles that we've been through with this and the stuff. And just as a, you know, as a small time content creator, I'm sure you understand. You know, it's like every hurdle that you could walk into somehow is there and ready for you to walk into it. You know, and so I think, you know. For me, I'll say mine first. You go. For me, the hardest struggle was at one point we were working out the movement system and trying to get momentum involved, which is a big part of our movement system because, you know, in the air and in water and things like that, momentum, and even in cars, you know, that's why there's a braking distance and things like that. Momentum's a big factor, and we really wanted to include that in this and make that prevalent. So working out that momentum system took us like 2 to 3 weeks of like multiple hour-long phone calls. Just, does this work? Let's test this. Oh no, that doesn't. Let's go about it from this angle. And it was just a lot to get our heads around. But once we got it, once we found it, we were like, okay, there we go. That's it. And so I think for me that was the hardest struggle. On top of just, you know, life stuff getting in the way. You know, mental health through working on a long project. You know, as you continue to grind and, you know, have to show up every day. And, you know, as the person who's writing the book and being the creative, you know, having to show up and bring top level creativity every day as I sit down and write is not an easy thing to do, but it's something that, you know, I pride myself on being able to do well enough and consistently enough at this point that we're providing a really good product, you know. Go for it.
I think so. There's two things for me. One is around the book, and then one is around the project itself. So with the system, there was a lot of time, almost maybe as much time spent on understanding different levels of travel. So if we're talking about it's in the air, that's a whole different concept than, you know, vehicles on the ground. So whether it's in the air, in space, or naval battles that have subsurface and on-surface battles, just having an understanding of, okay, how are we going to calibrate things like weapon distances, accuracy, weather, you know, those types of things, and how can we do that in a way that's pretty simple, that doesn't, you know, you're not doing Pythagoras' theorem every time, you know,
which we looked at,
which we considered for a minute. We actually considered doing a little app for that, like a little Pythagoras theorem app that you would plug in to see what the distance was. Anyway, we stripped that away, and we think we have a really, really good yet simple mechanism that is accurate, that was representative of Distance will make some things more difficult. Different weather conditions will make some things more difficult. So I think we've captured that in a way that feels good, but it took us a while to do that. Project-wise, we're moving toward getting this book, this system, to a place where it will monetize in some way. It will be presented to the community, and hopefully the community will find it so helpful to them that they'll find value in it, and they'll pass that value back to us. So in doing that, there are different propositions. You can either go the Kickstarter route, you can go the drive-through RPG route, you can do a Patreon, you can do all sorts of different things. And we set hung our hats on Kickstarter, and it is a whole education in itself, like to do a Kickstarter properly, and it's been a really, really valuable learning process for us, and we feel like we're learning on the job, but we're getting a handle on what the formula is, and it is a formula. Like it is a numbers formula, and if you are lacking in the numbers, then it will probably show at the end, and if you've done your homework, if you've really invested on the front end, then it hopefully will show in the end. So that's kind of what we're counting on, what we're banking on. Yeah.
Well, I've talked to quite a few Kickstarter newbies, I will call them, and it's all a bit rabbit in the headlight at this stage. And I look forward to everyone's next project when they're we learned so much on the first one that now we know what we're doing. Like you say, it's a learning curve on top of doing the actual work. It's hard work. So normally I would ask guys create a monster, because that's what I normally ask of people. But you guys don't do monsters in your book at all. Oh,
there will be a bunch of we are calling them creatures and mounts because not every creature is a monster. Is what we're going for. But yes, we will be including a section that has a bunch of fun stuff in it from the world that we play in, essentially.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, challenge us, because Bodhi's really good at creating monsters on the spot.
Exactly.
Go on. Give us your biggest curveball right now.
That's what I want. I want you to both to pencil. I need a monster in 5 minutes. I want you both to come up with as much as you can. Where does your brain go?
Okay. Come up with a monster off the bat. I'll come up with one that we haven't written yet for the book that I know is in the book that I have just the name of it. And I haven't done anything more than that at the moment. So it's a sky horse. So it's like a seahorse, but in the sky. So it has wings essentially attached to the side of it instead of the little flippery things it has essentially. In terms of designing the creature, I imagine something that I love is, typically when you see seahorses, they're very nervous creatures. They typically aren't very coming up and smelling you kind of thing and things like that. So I would probably give them some sort of ability that would allow them to make their scales reflective or camouflage type thing and be able to blend in with the environment, whether it be the sky, clouds, an island that they're going on, something like that, so that they could essentially almost mystique into a slightly different color or shape or something like that, so that they can hide themselves a bit better, as I imagine they're probably a bit more prey than predators. On top of that, I would love, I imagine I don't know what noise seahorses make, but I imagine it's almost like the purring of a cat, but more high-pitched kind of thing, like a kind of thing. And I would love to just see that, as you're flying through the sky, hearing that and knowing that there's one kind of near you or something like that.
It's like almost seeing a rainbow, isn't it? They're really it just puts a smile on your face.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Maybe I would include that as an ability, something, for example, something along the lines of, it can turn a creature's mood around or something like that, or something like that. Or maybe even, give you a buff to certain things and make you feel bolstered, like a bardic inspiration or, a bless or something like that, kind of thing, to simplify my writing so I could just copy and paste and use some of that instead of, as we're working on the spot here. And then finally, I would probably then look at cool, where do they kind of live? How do they work? I would say, because they're sky horses, I'm going to then take the horse part and say that they live in packs together and typically are out roaming, nomadic, looking for vegetation and places to, consume and things like that. I'd say they're probably very tribal because of that, and thus, losing a member would be a big loss to a group of them and things like that. And finally, I would love to, the final thing I imagine is that all of them kind of have this kind of crown of coral that kind of goes down their back and creates that kind of tail. You know how they're kind of like angular and kind of look like coral anyway, but actually have like a coral like back basically.
Nice.
Boom, that's my monster. There you go.
That's amazing. So Tom, where did Bodhi get this crazy imagination from?
I think he probably got it from.
That's a good.
He probably got it a little bit from me and a little bit from Mom, probably.
Yeah,
probably a little bit of both, different ways.
I would also say as well, like our family growing. So I grew up in Spain, and we didn't have television for the first like couple years that we lived there, and then when we finally did get a TV, you know, we didn't have any like cable television channels or anything like that. We could just rent movies from our local like Blockbuster essentially. And so a lot of like my childhood was like watching movies on Friday when we'd have our Friday movie night kind of thing as a family, and you know, seeing lots of different like I guess stimuli and stuff that like I was being exposed to. Like I remember watching Spirited Away as like a child and being just like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And you know, things like Lord of the Rings. But then like on the other spectrum, you know, you and I used to watch a lot of like martial arts movies. So I love like kung fu stuff. I love like Kill Bill. I love, you know, and then with Tracy, I love the romance. I love like rom-coms. And with my mom, I love like rom-coms and stuff. So I think you guys exposed me to a lot of like music, books, and like movies as a young kid that allowed me to like formulate and think about all this stuff. And also I grew up in that generation where I remember dial-up, like, you know, like you guys, like I remember what it was like outside playing with a stick and like being a freaking pirate for hours, you know, and not having an iPhone, you know. So I think that aided me massively in being creative and not being, you know, a youngster that is glued to, you know, technology and getting that, you know, constantly.
Yeah. So Tom, what's your role here?
What's my role? I'm the assist man. I guess my role is.
You got a huge.
So I've had a couple businesses in the past. So I'm culturally in our little team that we have. So it's more than Bodhi and I. We have someone that does kind of a jack of all trades, social media guy that also does some graphic design and a little bit of video editing. So he helps, and then we have a real specific video editor for a lot of our live stream stuff. We have 2 artists that we work with that are part of our intimate team, and then we have another artist that lives in Serbia as well, and that works with us, and then, you know, writing partners and all this. So although it's you know, we're working creating stuff for D&D, it needs to be presented as a business, the culture of a business, the culture of, you know, having consistency, having fun, but not at the expense of productivity. You know, all these things are things that you learn early on in your career, or not, you know, and but they're important. They're important to the success of the project. So I bring that, and then along with that, I am doing a lot of the marketing side of things. So that's how you and I initially hooked up, and then also I have fun playing stuff.
I was going to say, so Tom is one of the best role players we have at our table. His consistency with characters and character development and working at a D&D table is spectacular. Tom does all the marketing with the assist from, you know, Ben and Emily essentially are 2 people that are helping with that, but Tom is leading the marketing and doing all of that. On top of that, Tom dips into the writing to help me when Tony isn't able to assist with bits. Tom will come in and you know, bounce ideas off with me, read over a paragraph that I've written, you know, to give me, you know, some solid thoughts about things. So, you know, though it seems like, you know, I'm coming up with the creativity and doing all that, like Tom is the backbone. Tom is the wheels. Like no one on this planet, I swear, like maybe like David Goggins, like Kobe Bryant and like people like that, but no one on this planet that I know personally has drive like Tom to succeed, to achieve, to keep going, to push forward, to never stop. That all comes from him, and so luckily he's instilled a lot of that in me as I grew up, but having him on the team means that, you know, that's where we're at. We're consistent with that, you know, we battle through everything and work hard because of it, you know, we're all grinding non-stop and pedal to the metal, you know.
So you have a vision and you're like, my dad is actually gonna help me realize this vision, because you know he's got the skills to produce, in effect. So on the business side of it, Tom, that's quite hard. You need to get people in. You need, you know, a crew. to help you get this thing off the ground, and yet it's your boy's dream. And so how hard is that, getting the right people? Because you want to give your son the best people out, artists, thousands of millions of artists. It's like, right, how do you know these are the guys or girls for me?
Yeah, it's a process, isn't it? It's a process that
was an excellent question. That was awesome. That was.
I will speak to the artist part of it, because that was probably the easiest. Is our main artist? We just couldn't not pick him. He was just so great, and the style was so resonant to what we wanted. And we've had him for 2 years now, and he's done everything for us. Now we have other artists that basically complement our lead artist, and they do other things. They make maps, they do other bits and pieces, maybe sub-characters of or STLs or different positions of a character that he might create, or some work on some airships, some spaceships, things like that. But I think an artist selection is very, very personal and instant. You will know whether you like an artist or not. And then it comes down to, okay, well, can we afford him? And he has been very reasonable with us. He's been very consistent. He's super professional as well. We like him.
He's a friend at this point as well.
We like him a lot. Yeah. And so that's, to your point, Chris, this is an important lesson to teach as well, which is, although it is a business, the relationships that you build around the business are super important. So having writer friends, having artist friends, having collaborators that are all around us, having, partners that are working with us through this Kickstarter, all of that, eventually comes down to relationships, to having people that you actually respect and like, along with the fact that those folks can deliver some stuff as well. So, you have to go through that as an experience, as a young person as well. I've gone through it a little bit in my earlier years, and these guys are going through it now as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So obviously, got a new question. What's been popping up? Okay, and it's, how do you speed up combat? And you've got an extra difficulty because you've got ships on top of regular combat. So give me some ideas.
So speeding up general D&D combat, I would say I would say a lot of that comes down to players. Is like, your players need to be ready. They need to be like knowing what they're going to be doing, like actively listening and thinking about what's happening around them at all times and all that kind of stuff. As a DM, you can only really lead that as much as your players want to. If they're grab assing and messing around, then it be what it be. But in terms of with like our ship combat and stuff like that, we have added one step to combat, and that is it. That's the only thing that we've added to combat in terms of like the order of combat that was presented to you by Wizards of the Coast. So we essentially have it so that when a player chooses to go to the helm station and use an action to set movement for the ship, basically, there's something called the Zephyr movement phase, which is at the end of a round of combat, both ships or however many ships move all at the same time, basically. Yeah. So essentially, it gives you not only this idea of this blind chess game where the DM and the players don't always know what the other one's going to do because everything moves at once at the end of the round, but also it means that actually, in terms of adding anything extra to your D&D, we're not. It's simply, cool, how far did the ships move? Let's get the positions right, sorted, essentially, and that's it. Other than that, it's standard D&D initiative order. So speeding things up, like I said, making sure your players are attentive, making sure you're keeping them interested in the combat with fun stuff, and then, making sure your initiative is well written, so as a DM can go through that easily, making sure you're tracking stuff. I find creating some sort of tracker that's easy for you as a GMs, where you've got like ACs and HPs and who's got what conditions on and things like that, or rings. I know Matt Mercer, people see him putting rings on minis if you've got minis and things like that. That kind of stuff will speed it up. But as far as our Sky combat, we're only giving you one more thing, so it's not really stretching people that much in terms of the order of combat and making it longer.
Right, I'm throwing over to you guys now. What have I not asked you about that I need to know?
Ooh, great. Can I just say, Chris, your questions have been awesome. You're absolutely killing it tonight. You're killing it tonight. You go first.
Well, I think the thing. So if I were to answer the previous question you asked now, I would have changed my answer, which is this concept of having the DM and the players pick the movement of the ships. Almost, you can have it as a public selection, or you can have it as a private selection. So it is really, at that point, two ships could be on the same level, one could be pointed at the other, and the selection is that one goes down and one goes up and avoids the entire conflict. Or the other selection could be, as for an example, they both turn for whatever reason and they're now pointing at each other. But that amount of strategic, almost like playing chess in a legitimate way. So the DM can try to dramatize the situation by having a little bit more control over the movement if they want to, but we've placed it so that it can be completely random, and the DM, as much as the players, are on this ride, on this swashbuckling, dogfight ride all together. And so I think that's really cool, and it's something that I just haven't seen in this type of combat before. So I'm super, super proud of that little discovery that we had along the way.
I think that's a great shout. I think that's an awesome shout. I think everyone's going to be surprised. I'll mention the thing that I want to talk about in a second, but another thing I'd say is everyone's going to be surprised. I think the way we've gone about this is, we've tried to go super simple. We've also tried to make it as feasibly customizable as one. You could use one thing out of our book, or you could use the entire thing. It's entirely up to you. And that's kind of what we're really leaning into. So I think, we want people to, when they open it and they read how easy this is, have a smile on their face, and instead of being like, oh no, I've got 100 new rules to understand and all this kind of stuff. Yes, there'll be things that will take time to get used to, and with playing it, you'll get better at. But that's how it is with any board game. But the thing I wanted to talk about that I'm super, super excited about is our new player feats that are essentially, people keep asking us, is there going to be classes? Is there going to be, what player options are there? And what we've settled for is these new player feats, and they're not like your standard one paragraph feats. We're talking, these are big chunky things that in some cases take up half a page, and give you a lot as a player, especially for sky combat. Essentially, things like, with names like we've got the pilot feat, the mechanic, the sky medic, the necromantic ward, the divine protector, the ammunition artificer, the artilleryman, the boarding crew. We've got all these incredible feats that are going to allow you to not only write your backstory because you've taken an interesting feat that is like, oh, how did you become a pilot? Why are you the divine protector of this ship? Give you interesting backstory options and expand your character in that way. But not only that, you'll get these awesome things that will mean that within the role that you've taken, you can then do loads of awesome stuff on your ship, help your team during combat, and specific things that are just tailor custom to you. The final thing about that is super awesome is we have our commands. Now we have the system where the aircrew on a ship can be commanded by players to perform certain actions and feats, essentially, of doing things. Each feat comes with a couple of special commands, essentially, that they can give the aircrew that, again, are specifically tailored to them, their feature that they've chosen, their role on the ship, and things like that. So, a pilot can ask someone to take the helm. You can see the boarding crew member to ask the crew that have boarded to retreat. And then on top of that, we have a bunch of basic commands as well. But the feats really just, I think, develop players and give you roles on a ship. We didn't want to lock people down to being like, you've got to be the captain, you've got to be we wanted to give it so that anyone can be the pilot, anyone can be the mechanic, anyone can be this. Now, don't get me wrong, we have given the option of specific classes, if you want as a DM to lock it down to be like, cool, only, martial classes can be part of the boarding crew, you're totally fine to do that. But we have also said anyone can take any number of these feats, and if you want to take, all of them yourself or a bunch of them yourself and be the master airship dude, then that's totally cool as well. So I'm super excited about that bit. I'm actually just finishing writing the last couple feats at the moment, and I absolutely love it. They're super interesting and fun.
Can I cheat and add one more thing?
Yeah.
Just as a side note, the way the book is written is, Bodhi mentioned the title of it, it's Galmer and Satva, these two characters that are part of the Sky Realm world, but we've used these two characters, brought them in, and they have different backstories to themselves. But the way that we've presented the book is they have an ongoing dialogue that goes on how they initially thought of writing this Sky Zephyrs book. And then for each section, they have a little bit of...
For each chapter, we have a little quote section.
A little bit of dialogue back and forth between them, which really kind of makes the reading, along with the mechanics and the background and all this stuff, you have a nice, hopefully a nice feel of this personal journey that these two have gone on themselves in writing the book for you. So I've really enjoyed that.
And just the fact that they're two absolute numpties. They're two absolute numpties.
So next steps, what's the future hold? After a success, as I'm sure it will be, what's the sequel? What's the second sequel? What we're doing?
You jinxed us now by saying. I'm joking. I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. No, it was actually the lucky touch. You saying that was what sealed the deal for us. Actually, now we're going to be successful. So I would say, I know we talked about the airship builder and stuff. We see a lot of legs with that, building it out for, having tanks in there eventually, and naval vessels and spaceships, and then at some point, converting all the parts that we have to Pathfinder and Orbital Blues, and giving people system options as well as just vehicle and part options. But I know for us, our true love is we love playing the game. Like, when it comes down to it, we love playing TTRPGs and being in that space. Same as everyone else in this community. We fell in love with the game. And because of that, I know we will be doing a lot more actual play content, but we will essentially be doing smaller Kickstarters, essentially, I believe, 3 monthly Kickstarters, like on a 3-month rotation, where we will be centering all of the stuff that we record and play. Our actual plays will be centered around whatever we're releasing at the end of that. And then all the content and stuff that we create that you see in those will be included kind of in those Kickstarters. Is kind of our plan going forward. But yeah, that and just have fun. Like, I think this last year has been a grind, and I think if this goes well, we just want to be able to enjoy for a little bit, coast and enjoy. I think for a little bit, like just enjoy for a little bit, because this has been a ridiculous grind, and we've been working hard to get to the point where we can turn to both our, his wife, my partner, our friends, our family, our anyone else in our community, and say, we've turned this into a career now. We can now say that we're professionals at what we do. And I think, to us, being able to do that would mean a lot, and would allow us to, feel a little bit of relief and a little bit of, weight off our shoulders and have a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Anything else for you to add? Anything else that I've forgotten?
I think that point of taking this over the line and getting it to a place where there's a difference between, and you'll know this, Chris, between saying I think we have something and getting over the line and saying we have something. Like, we have proven we have something. Now we just have to do it again. And we know the formula. We actually are continuing to learn, but we now know a proven formula that works.
And people like what we've done.
And people like what we've done. Now you start building, a brand, and you start building a little bit more longevity in this hobby. And so that is pretty exciting. But I think ultimately Bodhi's point is right. Like, it's super important for anyone that's in the space, especially like if you're in the social media space, where that is a really
ruthless.
That's a weird chase right there. Whether you have 1,000 followers on Twitter or 50,000 followers on Twitter, there's someone that's always going to have more than you, and you're always kind of grinding. And it's to me, it's not the place that we necessarily want to be. But it's important to remember having fun along the way, really calibrating yourself so that you can have some laughs along the way. And sometimes it's hard to remember that, but that's what our goal is.
Yeah, our whole thing is like with you today, we want to connect with people and, continue to form, our relationship is why we're doing this. We want to just build more relationships with people and continue to, help others grow. The moment we have any platform, and at the moment it's kind of our Discord server, we're elevating people massively in there. There's a community forming that is going to be supportive of not just us, but anyone else that comes and becomes a part of what we call our family, essentially the familia. And and that's what we're all about. We just want to freaking have fun doing stuff that we love. And so if this goes well, it's one step closer to doing that. And I think that's where we're at this point.
Well, obviously, you're surviving on your hopes and your actual efforts that you put in now, but I want you to cast your little hopes away now. I want you to talk about dream. So in 20 years' time, right?
Oh, good one.
When you're like, just do off with reality, are you sat behind a big Empire desk on a skyscraper saying, we're the new Coca-Cola, you know what I mean? We have, what are you doing? Are you producing more of this, or have you got so many different brands in other things?
First of all, I'm almost 80. I am 80, actually.
Oh yeah, you will be 80. Yeah, if we're talking that time, you will be. Oh, sorry.
But you'll have so much money, you'll be, be on the...
We'll have the best healthcare at that point. We'll be able to, and it's 20 years' time. Dementia will have been cured by then. We'll solve that problem. No, I think...
you go first. I'll tell you what I think, because we've never even talked about this.
We've never even talked about this at all.
I want you to say something that you think is ridiculous, and then in 20 years' time be closer than you think. Be like, whoa, I had that.
Well, that's where I'm going to shoot for that. So I hope that Homie and the Dude becomes a brand that can at some point become Homies and the Dudes. And I would love to build it to a point where we have other DMs stepping in and making their own actual play content, casts of players, whether we end up with things like Legend of Vox Machina, our own animated shows of stories that we've told and things like that. I would love to have that kind of, mini empire. But I will be honest, I would no longer be, if we reach that level, I would no longer be working for the company at that point. I would simply be making sure, I think the only thing that I would have to do with that company would be making sure that the work environment for the employees that are within my company is good. And you know how much that matters a lot to me. So I would really...
So what would you be doing?
So I would want to be directing a television show of some sorts. I would love to, at some point use all the skills I've learned writing in D&D, all the time that I've spent telling stories, delivering dialogue, all this, and be able to at some point work on like a TV show like The Last of Us, or awesome. Rings of Power, or any Breaking Bad, anything that we consider to be legendary shows. I would love to just have a seat at a writing table doing that, or directing or something like that. So working within television is where I would love to be, but with the understanding that through all of that I would have gone through the beautiful moments of having an incredible show, experiencing beautiful guests, at some point maybe having an animated show like I said, and done all the the D&D stuff before I eventually go, okay, I'm gonna step away from that, allow other people to step in shoes, and I'm gonna go chase something else for a little bit. I think that's me.
Yeah. What about you? For me, this has been a vehicle for us mostly, and I've had my chase in my prime years, and I'm almost 60 now, so I feel like as the years go on, Bodhi is downloaded much of my business brain already, and once he has most of it or all of it, then I'll probably start taking a secondary role, start being a little bit more of
the talent. Show up on the day.
Being the old guy that kicks the tires on the business every now and again. Everyone kind of has to straighten up when I walk in, and
I love it.
Put their screensaver back on their on their computer that shows some sort of spreadsheet instead of. But yeah, I think if I can get it to a point where I start phasing myself into being more of a supportive person and less of a one of the key stakeholders, that would be great, because my wife and I, we have our own retirement plans as well, so that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. Well, from me, on the other side of the screen, I will say this, that my first campaign was Horde of the Dragon Queen with the new players 4 years ago. When they got that Horde, the first thing they wanted to buy at the start of Rise of Tiamat, the next campaign, was the airship, and that was the first thing they got. It was all about pimping out this airship. After all that had gone, they did what they did. The next mission, they got a chance in Chult. It was Tomb of Annihilation. The first thing they wanted was the airship again.
Nice.
And so Tom probably knows, you look for a gap in the market and you fill it. And now so many Kickstarters are like, we're doing another cyberpunk, we're doing another medieval, D&D sort of thing, which is fine. They succeed. But you're hitting an empty bit, what needs to be filled. I mean, how can it fail? It can't. I just don't see how it can fail.
Thanks, Chris.
I appreciate that, Chris. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
So-
Let me ask you, what about you? I'm going to flip it back on you. Where do you see yourself in 20 years with all this content that you're making?
And your son being part of the,
Exactly. Yeah. Where do you see yourself, man?
I am going to be interviewing my son. He has already taken the little bits I tell him about these chats. He's already started making his own thing to one day put on a Kickstarter. He's only 14, but he knows more about D&D than me because his brain absorbs it much quicker. I forget. But I want to be among the YouTubers that I watch now, and weirdly, I'm getting some of them to already talk to, and I'm looking up to them like they're my heroes. But I tell you what, if any young nobody asks me to be on their YouTube channel, I will accept every offer because that's how I think it should be. We're no one's really that special. We're all just people getting on.
Yeah.
So hopefully, wherever I get to, and I will keep going until I can't go on any longer. That's what I'm committed, And yeah, I just want to help the community out from however I can. I want to be the middle of the wheel where everyone can come to my channel and advertise for nothing, and I can also talk to the big boys.
That's absolutely awesome, dude. And we fully understand that. There's kind of that moment where you're like, wow, actually people are a lot more accessible than I realized. Like you can message people and they respond and stuff. So it's a great community to be in. And you know what, I've got to say, you're asking some amazing questions. You're a very good host. I think more than likely we'll be seeing you in the future, and us the same, dude. I had never thought about someone asking us, a small timer than us, to ask us to be on our show. That's an inconceivable thought to me. So I had never even considered that thought for someone to ask to be on our podcast. But I agree with you. If the moment anyone who is small D&D is like, hey, I would love to be on your could I be on your podcast, or could I be on your actual play or something like that, I would most likely be like, yeah, that's awesome. You guys have, you're on the grind that we're on, so come along. And I think that's an awesome sentiment, and I very much appreciate that, Chris. I think you're definitely got your head in the right place to succeed in this space as well, dude, for sure.
Thank you so much. Well, hopefully we will grind and rise together and have our 20th year celebration cocktails one day.
Dude, that would be freaking awesome, dude. I look forward to messaging you. Well, at that point it'll be like hologram, something or rather, So we'll work it out then.
But I'll still have no hair. I'll look just the same.
I'll also have no hair at that point. We'll all be bald.
Yeah. All right, guys, it's been great fun. And the last question: when the hell is it out?
Great. So we're currently working towards June 1st, but dependent on numbers and where we're at with the book, we may delay. But we can guarantee that it will be before October this year. 100% it will be before October this year.
I mean, if it is a numbers game at this point, like we talked about earlier, and we're looking at our pre-launch followers, and so as those numbers grow, then we will be able to calibrate, okay, well, this is how much the investment we put in. There's a formula to understand what the conversion is of your pre-launch followers that will be able to fund you quickly in the Kickstarter. So once we get that in the right place, the numbers in the right place, and they're going in a really good place right now. We're almost at at time of this filming, hopefully by the time this drops, it'll be further down the line. They're almost at 500. So we want to get closer to 1,000 pre-launch followers, which is a healthy number. So for those of you that have heard anything that we've spoken about today, if you can drop over to Kickstarter, look up Zephyrs, and hit that pre-launch button, that will help us a lot in accelerating this to market. That's what we're looking to do.
And on top of that, while we're working on it, we are releasing sample pages from the book. We've been releasing art, doing Q&As, all that kind of stuff about the book frequently. So if you're interested in keeping up to date with don't know what just happened to me. The progress of the book and the Kickstarter itself, then join our Discord server. We're putting updates in there absolutely constantly, as well as also our newsletter. They're both free. They're both places, whichever you'd prefer to get an email or come hang out in a space with other people. We don't mind. But yeah, our newsletter of Holding and our Discord server, the People's Republic, are the two best places to get updates on all of that.
Wonderful. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much.
No, thank you,
Chris.
mate. Thank you for being such a gracious host and asking such awesome questions. We appreciate you massively, dude. Absolutely massively. Thank you.
Thank you.